In our previous videos, we were focusing on missionary work in Bangkok. We first looked at the arrival of Catholics in the 15 and 1600s, and then the arrival of Protestants in the early 1800s, and then development of missionary work of Protestants in the Bangkok area. So today we're going to move out of Bangkok, and we're going to take a look at the life and ministry of one of the most well-known and influential missionaries in establishing the church in northern Thailand, and that's Daniel McGilvary. McGilvary was the son of Scottish Presbyterian immigrants, born and raised in North Carolina in the United States. After completing seminary studies at Princeton Seminary, McGilvary returned to North Carolina as an interim pastor for 1 year before following God's call to become a missionary to Thailand, or Siam as it was called at that time. He had done a pastoral internship in Texas, and seeing how many churches there were in Texas, he decided, I want to minister someplace where Christ has not been named, someplace where it's a fresh field where people have not heard the gospel. In 1858, McGilvray arrived in Bangkok. He was a single man. He arrived with his former classmate from Princeton, Jonathan Wilson, and his wife, and both men were part of the American Presbyterian Mission in Siam. McGilvray found the language frustrating, but as his ability grew, he accompanied Dr. House, another American Presbyterian missionary, on evangelistic tours in the greater Bangkok area. In 1860, McGilvray found the love of his life, Sophia Bradley, the daughter of Denbich Bradley, and the two wed, and they moved into a house that was given to them by Sophia's father, Dan Bradley. It seemed like the couple might stay in Bangkok, but it wasn't to be. A year later, Mr. and Mrs. McGilvray, together with Samuel McFarland and his wife, they moved to Petchaburi, which was a province a number of kilometers west of Bangkok. Today, it takes about an hour to drive. It was much further at that time. You would get there by boat. So as the two missionary couples moved out of Bangkok, they were given permission to live in Petchaburi by the lieutenant governor. But the condition of them living there was that one of the missionaries would teach English to the son of the lieutenant governor. McFarland, who had more of an aptitude for schoolwork, he took this on, while McGilvray focused his time on evangelism. The first believer in Petchaburi was a man named Nai Kon, and he just showed up at the missionary's door with actually a rudimentary understanding of Christianity already. So where had he learned the gospel? How is it that he believed, having never met a missionary? Years earlier, he had picked up some discarded gospel tracts that had been handed out by Dan Bradley on one of his evangelistic tours. Nikon had never met Bradley, but someone who received the tracts from Bradley did not want them, passed them on to Nikon. He read them, and he believed. The two missionaries examined him and found that he was rather confused about the Trinity and a few other matters, but the essentials of faith he understood. Nikon, interestingly, never got baptized. He thought, I believe, what's the point? Despite the missionaries urging him to do so. When the two men were evangelizing in Petchaburi, McGilvray happened upon a group of people who were a bit different than the others there. They were Lao. These Lao were conscripted laborers who had been brought from the northeast part of the country. When the Siamese army had gone into one of the vassal states in the northeast, which is called Isan, today in Thailand, the kingdom there had lost, and some of the captives were brought to Petchaburi, west of Bangkok, in order to be labor for the Thai government. McGilvray was intrigued by their language, their customs, and he was interested to know more. Who were these people? Where did they come from? At this point in history, Siam was a kingdom centered in Bangkok, while the Lao states were multiple vassal kingdoms in what is today northeast and northern Thailand and part of Laos. So McGilvray wanted to know, who are these people? Where do they come from? So he made an exploratory trip to one of the Lao states, centered in Chiang Mai in northern Thailand. What he saw in Chiang Mai was a wide opportunity for ministry. And a few years later, McGilvray and his wife moved north to Chiang Mai to begin more than 40 years of ministry in the north. At that time, the ruler of Chiang Mai was a man named Chao Gawirodot, who is regarded as the prince of Chiang Mai. Why was he a prince? Because his kingdom was a vassal state to Siam. The king was the ruler of Siam was the king, so the ruler of Chiang Mai and the state that surrounded it was a prince. Chao Gawirodot permitted McGilvary to be there but it was with some hesitation. And we'll see in a moment some of his hesitation and his opposition to the young church, which would grow up in Chiang Mai. When McGilvary and his wife first got there, they needed to take time to build a house. They needed to hire laborers. But while the house was being built, they were given a sala or a gazebo type structure to live in. And from there, they distributed medicines. He preached. They were perhaps the first white people to live in Chiang Mai. There had perhaps been an itinerant British timber trader who had come through previously, but they were the first ones to live there. So even as today in many places in Thailand, a random white person attracts attention. Back then, it was unprecedented. Many people came to see them just to see the oddity of these foreigners who had arrived. But upon learning they had medicines and they had books, many people became interested. They talked with them, and McGilvary, not only from that sala, but also going out into the surrounding area in the villages, began preaching and talking with the people. He focused on reaching men in particular and older men, hoping that these men would be the core of a new church that would form. The first converts were made in 1869 when McGilvary evangelized conscripted laborers who were coming into the city. The Prince of Chiang Mai had required them to haul in timber and to do other public works for the government, for him. This first believer was named Nan Inta. He was a former Buddhist abbot, and he was the first man to be baptized. His faith in Buddhism, in the folk Buddhism that he practiced, it was shaken when McGilvary accurately predicted a solar eclipse, in contrast to the claims of the pseudoscientific books that Nan Inta had believed. According to Nan Inta's books, an eclipse only occurs when a monster eats the sun. But it's impossible to predict when a monster will eat the sun. When will the moon strike the monster? We don't know. But when McGilvary, using modern science, predicted the day and the hour when the eclipse would occur, it really gave Nainta a lot of food for thought. He went home, he thought about it. He thought, if my books were wrong about this eclipse, what else might they be wrong about? Could they be wrong about religion? And shortly thereafter, Nainta walks into McGilvary's home and he comes in and says, Mente, it's true. The teacher's books are true. After seeing the eclipse come when McGilvary said it was, and meditating upon all the conversations about religion and geography, the gospel that the two men had had, Nainta believed. Nainta's royal patrons were very impressed with the sincerity of the man. The fact that this older, respected man in the community had come to faith opened the door for other people who were interested to believe as well. So within a short time after that, there was a nucleus of a small and growing church in Chiang Mai. But increasingly, as the number of Christians grew, Zhao Gawarero became concerned. He felt threatened by the missionaries. The missionaries were obviously not physically threatening him or verbally threatening him, but Zhao Gawarero saw them as a rival patron. People were going to the missionaries for help. They were going to the missionaries for resources. So in order to get rid of the missionaries, Zhao Gawarero, he sent a letter to Bangkok to the U.S. consul accusing the missionaries of causing a poor rice harvest. The U.S. consul, seeing this as a ridiculous claim, wrote back to Gawarero and said, the missionaries did not cause the poor rice harvest. They would not be removed, but he would command the missionaries to not cause any droughts or harvests. The prince was angry. This wasn't what he wanted. He secretly ordered all the Christians arrested. Most of them fled, but two men, Nan Chai and Noi Surya, they were captured. They were tortured. They refused to deny Christ. They were murdered. They were hacked to death with swords in the jungle. For a long time, nobody told the missionaries where anybody was, what had happened, where Noi Surya and Nan Chai had disappeared to. But a couple weeks later, someone secretly came to the missionaries by night. He told them what had happened. The missionaries wondered, are we next? Will Zhao Gawarero be coming for us? Some suggested leaving, but McGilvary was convinced they had to stay. They sent letters to Bangkok, not knowing if that would be the last communication this side of heaven. The letters were received in Bangkok. A Siamese royal representative and a representative of the U.S. government came up to Chiang Mai. They met with the prince. They met with the missionaries. And the agreement was, since Chiang Mai was a vassal state, was that the prince of Chiang Mai, Zhao Gawarero, could not harm the missionaries. What he wanted to do his own subjects, the Lao Christians in the north, that was up to him. But he couldn't touch the missionaries. But the damage was done. There was 2 martyrs, and the Christians that were in the north, they had fled. They were in hiding. They were afraid. Would they be killed next? It was completely up to Zhao Gawarero what he wanted to do. Providentially, not long after this, Zhao Gawarero had to travel to Bangkok by boat in order to give tribute to the king of Siam. On the way, he got sick, and on that journey, he passed away. And a new king, a friendlier king, came to rule in Chiang Mai. However, it was still a few years before anyone was brave enough to show their face, before they're brave enough to publicly be seen with the missionaries and to gather for public worship. But despite this setback, the church grew. In 1877, there was a group of elders for First Church Chiang Mai that had been established. Through the efforts of McGilvary and other American Presbyterian missionaries, a church was started in Chiang Mai, and evangelism was done in the surrounding areas. Through the power of the Holy Spirit, there was people in the surrounding villages and the surrounding areas, as I did itinerant evangelism, who became interested in the gospel. McGilvary's work and that of his fellow missionaries was not confined to Chiang Mai. If you look at where McGilvary actually went, he went all over northern Thailand, he went into Laos, he went into southern China. Not only McGilvary, but others. They went by foot, they went by horse, they went by elephant, by whatever means they could. McGilvary's strategy was not one of starting schools and hospitals, institutions, but his emphasis was on itinerant evangelism. He would visit villages on his travels, and first he would privately visit the village leaders. He wanted to make sure that the village leaders knew the non-political nature of their message, to set their minds at ease. He was not there to threaten their power. He was not to take people away or to cause problems with local politics. His message was religious. It was benevolent. When he went into the villages and he met with people, he emphasized making a positive presentation of the gospel rather than criticizing Buddhism, which was not uncommon among missionaries of the time. McGilvary wanted to positively commend Christ and the gospel and the God whom he served. As Lao people became Christians, McGilvary took local converts along with him. Nan Inta, who was the first person to believe, he took him on many trips. He was very glad to have the wise and mature person of Nan Inta, who knew the language, who knew the culture, with him. When McGilvary, on his travels, he encountered people who were interested in the gospel, he would make note of who they were, what village they were in, and when he came around again, he would make sure he went back to those villages and visited with those people. His philosophy was to start churches ahead of mission stations. One of the philosophies in missionary strategy at the time was for missionaries to move into a location, they would build a house, they would start a school, start a little clinic. They would basically set up shop at one location and just work entirely out of that location and try to start a church there. But McGilvary, he had a house in Chiang Mai. He did work there. But when he went out into the villages, he didn't want to start mission stations many places. He was interested in starting churches. So he would repeatedly visit places where there was interest. And when people started to believe, he would form them into a little group and then a little church. And when there was a critical mass there, that would be founded, established as a new church. Daniel McGilvary and his wife Sophia were the first missionaries in Chiang Mai, but they were the first of many. McGilvary, together with many other missionary co-workers and many local co-workers, Thai believers, tirelessly evangelized northern Thailand. By the time of his death in 1911, McGilvary had traversed the entirety of northern Thailand, and there were around 6,000 believers in the northern part of the country, which is a nucleus of a thriving and growing church today.